Johnson versus Kevin Lychwick, 24 CF 1881. Appearances, please.
The state appears by Chelsea Thompson and Dan Tombasco. Also at council table is Detective Ben Stern. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Lychwick. All right, Mr. Lychwick is present in court today in custody. Mr. Lychwick, like yesterday, is dressed in jail orange and he is in a wheelchair. Deputies, Mr. Lychwick is secured at the ankle, but his hands are free? Yes. Okay, they indicate that's correct. I understand that Mr. Lychwick has requested that same green jacket be brought up, and my bailiffs have contacted the jail staff to get that brought up. So we won't bring the jury in until that's transported up here and Mr. Lychwick has that on. Attorney Thompson, is the state still in victim rights compliance for today?
Yes, we are.
Anything the state wants addressed before we bring the jury in today?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lychwick, because you are dressed again in jail orange, do you want me to give that same instruction to the jury about how they should disregard the fact that you are in jail clothing? Mr. Lychwick continues to ignore the court. I'll make a record that after we were concluded for the day yesterday, Mr. Lychwick had an opportunity to consult with his standby counsel, Attorney Galaviz, in the courtroom while other people were present. Mr. Lychwick engaged with Attorney Galaviz in a very animated manner. He was conversational with Attorney Galaviz, and he was conversational with the bailiffs as well. I note this morning, too, before we called the case on the record, Mr. Lychwick was in an animated discussion with the standby counsel. He was proactive in requesting the jacket be brought up from the jail to the deputies. So, again, the court sees no apparent sign of distress in Mr. Lychwick. He's attentive now. He is looking straight down at the table, and he is simply ignoring the court, which is fine, but I just wanted to continue to make that record. Anything else, Mr. Lychwick, that you want on the record before we bring the jury in? Again, Mr. Lychwick.
I protest these proceedings. This is a travesty of justice. I am innocent of these charges. I have no way to defend myself. I demand that these proceedings be stopped so I can arrange for my defense and arrange for a different judge presiding my case if it's going to come to trial. This should never have come to trial. The evidence against me is tainted. This case should have been thrown out 8 months ago.
Those objections are noted. There are continuing objections that Mr. Lychwick has raised, with the exception of the request for...
No, I'm ruling. I am sick. I am not capable of sitting here all day again. I am not well. I have a tear in my stomach.
The court notes the objections and the protest raised by Mr. Lychwick. The only new one is the request for a new judge, which isn't going to happen at this stage of the proceeding. It is untimely. So with that, we will bring the jury in once the jacket arrives for Mr. Lychwick. We'll stand in recess until then.
to the jury.
Thank you. You may be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience as we take care of a few other things this morning. We are now ready to continue with the evidence part of the case. So, Attorney Thompson, the state may call its next witness.
Thank you. The state calls Dr. Amy Sheil.
Doctor, you can come all the way up to the witness stand. When you get up here, please remain standing and raise your right hand to be sworn in by the clerk.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. When you get yourself situated, that microphone or the black bar with the red dot is our microphone there. So get yourself comfortable. You can use the water there. And when you are ready, start by stating your name, spelling your first and last for the record.
Amy Sheil, AMYSHEIL.
Dr. Sheil, how are you presently employed?
I'm an associate medical examiner for Waukesha County.
And how long have you been so employed?
11 years.
Madam Clerk, can you please turn on the screen in front of the witness? Dr. Sheil, on the screen in front of you shortly is a 7-page document that will be marked as State's Exhibit 117. Do you see that exhibit sticker on the bottom right-hand corner now?
Yes.
Okay. And then scrolling through exhibit number 117, do you know what this is?
This is a copy of my curriculum vitae, or CV.
And what is the purpose of maintaining this CV over the years that you've been associate medical examiner?
It's a record of my education, training, past appointments, current employment, any papers or book chapters I've written, any presentations I've given.
I would move exhibit 117 into evidence, please.
Mr. Lychwick, any objection to the admission of Exhibit 117? The defendant does not reply. Exhibit 117 will be received.
Now, you indicated you've been an associate medical examiner for 11 years. What have been your appointments prior to being an associate medical examiner?
Prior to working for Waukesha County, I was employed as a pediatric pathologist for Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. Prior to that, I had worked for Children's Wisconsin for a couple of years. And prior to that, I worked for the Medical University of South Carolina for a year as a forensic pathologist after completing my training there.
Are you licensed in any, do you have a medical license in any other states besides Wisconsin?
South Carolina, Ohio, and Florida.
Do you have any professional certifications as it relates to your work in pathology?
Yes, I'm board certified in anatomic and clinical pathology, forensic pathology, and pediatric pathology.
Do you have to go through any kind of continuing education to maintain those certifications, or do you have to be recertified every year? How does that work?
Every 10 years, I have to take a recertification examination, but every 2 years, I have to do at least 100 hours of continuing medical education in my course of study, which would be pathology, specifically forensic and pediatric pathology.
Can you describe for the jury your education?
Yes, I attended Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska for undergraduate. and then I stayed there for medical school. I completed medical school in 2003, then did residency in anatomic and clinical pathology at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. Then I did my forensic pathology fellowship. Part of it was in Tampa, Florida, and the rest of it was at the Medical University of South Carolina. I worked for the Medical University of South Carolina for a year as a forensic pathologist, and then did a 1-year pediatric pathology fellowship prior to working for about 5 years in pediatric pathology.
Now, over your career in this field,
Just double check your connection.
I think
Screen went out.
it did, yes. So it did for Mr. Lychwick as well.
You could try the old-fashioned method of unplugging it and plugging it back in. Oh, it's on our end, sorry.
I can continue on, though, while we're figuring that out.
Okay, we'll try to fix it on our end.
Thank you. Dr. Sheil, over your career, have you been invited to speak at any lectures or any workshops based on your training and your experience?
Yes.
Can you give an overview of those opportunities for the jury?
I've done a couple of workshops for not only prosecutors but defense lawyers. I've given workshops in pediatric pathology for some of our professional societies like the National Association of Medical Examiners or the American Academy of Forensic Sciences or the Society of Pediatric Pathology. So just to name a few.
Okay.
Just for the record, we have the screen back up.
Yes, thank you. And I see it on Mr. Lychwick's screen, too.
Thank you.
Now, we're hearing a lot of the study of pathology. So what is the study of pathology?
Pathology is the study of disease or a disturbance in normal function. That's the general definition of pathology, which means from the Greek, I believe, pathos or suffering. So it's the study of disease. Forensic pathology is the study of how disease and injury cause death. And pediatric pathology is the study of diseases and conditions in infants and children.
Now, as we continue going through exhibit number 117, sorry, scrolling down to the end here. Have you had any publications or been part of the peer review process of publications in the area of pathology and forensic pathology?
Yes.
Can you give an overview to the jury about some of those publications?
In forensic pathology, a lot of our publications are based on case reports, which means maybe one case of something unusual that happens that obviously causes death in an individual. For example, one report I wrote was about a teratoma, which is a type of tumor in a newborn. There have been some pediatric pathology papers about different types of tumors or cancers. And one forensic pathology publication about taser-related fatalities.
Moving on from your training and your experience and your education, as an associate medical examiner for Waukesha County, does that mean you are reporting to the district attorney's office?
No.
Do you report to law enforcement in terms of, are they in charge of your office?
No.
Do you get paid by either law enforcement or the district attorney's office for the work you do in pathology?
No.
As an associate medical examiner, what are the main duties that you have?
My primary purpose and the role of my job is to determine cause and manner of death. Sometimes in order to do that, we might need to do full autopsies. Sometimes our examination might just be an examination of the external surfaces of the body in cases where an injury is already well documented and an autopsy is not likely to yield any additional information. We might go to the scene and do a scene evaluation or a scene investigation. We look at medical records. We look at police reports. Any information that might help us determine how and why somebody died is our purview.
During this examination, do you ever perform lab tests such as toxicology?
Yes.
What about medical records of the deceased individual?
Yes.
Do you perform any kind of microscopic exams?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of testifying in court as it relates to autopsies you have performed or external examinations, approximately how many times have you done that over the last 10 years as an associate medical examiner?
At least 50.
Is there also another doctor in the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Does the medical examiner's office review every single death that happens in Waukesha County?
No. We review deaths that are reported to our office. So a report might come by way of police who are at a residence where somebody's died. It might come from police who are at the scene of a traffic accident or traffic incident. It might be from a hospice where there's been an injury to the patient prior to death that might be related to her death. It might come from a hospital or a nursing facility of some type, even in assisted living. Any situation that the reporter feels warrants additional investigation gets reported to our office, but we do operate under certain guidelines based on state statute 979, which describes which types of cases are reported to the medical examiner's office.
Are there also investigators within the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
What is their role?
They are the front lines of our office. They will take the demographic information regarding a death report, so the patient's name, age, date of birth, the history of events, what led up to the death. The investigator, if it's police calling to report the death, will respond to the scene, whether it be a residence, a scene death like a traffic accident or something else suspicious, or a drowning, something where there happens to be an injury or something non-natural that played a role in the death and is obvious. The investigator might also respond to scenes where it's not clear what happened. The investigator always has one of our pathologists on call. There are 3 of us. So there's always a pathologist on call for backup to that investigator, but the investigator generally will initially respond to the scene, do an evaluation, call the pathologist if necessary, and sometimes the pathologist will also respond to the scene.
You mentioned that one of your main duties as an associate medical examiner is to determine cause and manner of death. What are the differences between the two?
The cause of death refers to why the death occurred. It's the pathophysiological, big word for saying what derangement in the body caused the death. The manner of death refers to the circumstances surrounding death, how the death occurred. And while there might be a myriad or infinite ways or causes of death, there are only 5 manners of death: accident, natural, homicide, suicide, or undetermined.
When we talk about those causes of death, is it possible that, let's say, you determine a gunshot wound is the cause of death? Now, could the manner, depending on the circumstances in your investigation, be either a homicide or a suicide?
Yes.
Okay. Have you previously been called to scenes where you ultimately concluded, after your investigation, that the manner of death was homicide?
Yes.
Can you give the jury an estimate how many times you've done that?
We don't have a high homicide rate in Waukesha County, which is fortunate. But I've probably attended homicide scenes 20 times in my career here.
I would like to direct your attention to October 30th of 2024. Did you report to a scene at 1512 East North Street in the city and county of Waukesha?
Yes.
And why did you report to that scene?
My investigator called me and let me know that some bones were discovered partially wrapped in what looks like plastic and maybe a tarp in a wooded area behind the residential apartment complex at this address.
And so this would be one of those circumstances where you would go to the scene. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Do you recall about what time you arrived on scene?
Probably about 7:30 p.m.
When you arrive on scene at 1512 East North, what is the first thing that you do?
The first thing, depending on how the scene is situated, meaning what the perimeter is, who's taking information, is perhaps a sign-in at whoever is holding a scene log, who's documenting who's coming into the scene. Then I talk to my investigator, get some more information, if any is known, about the circumstances or situation. Then we might respond or talk to any police personnel on scene who have more information. Then I make my own observations about the scene. What kind of environment are we in? Like I said, it was a residential apartment complex. There was a relatively wooded area adjacent to the complex. It was up a hill. We traversed the hill, we went up top, and made some more observations at that point.
If you could look on your screen in front of you, what has been previously marked and admitted as State's Exhibit number 4, is this the scene at 1512 East North that you were just describing for us?
Yes.
Okay, now, the bottom of Exhibit 4 here, does that lead to the driveway then of this apartment building?
Yes, if you're continuing down towards me out of the picture, it would go towards the parking lot.
Okay. Now, as you, actually, Madam Clerk, can you please show Exhibit 4 for the jury? Okay, Dr. Sheil, was it, since it was about 7:30, was it a little bit darker when you arrived on scene?
Yes.
And does your office, or was it the police department that had any kind of lights so that you could illuminate the area and make sure you weren't missing anything?
Yes, the police did establish large, powerful lights surrounding this area, which has deadfall or branches on top of it, and the blue, just the blue coloration. So we set up lights around that so we could see better.
Now, once you arrived on scene and you made those initial observations of your surrounding environment and what you were actually looking at, did you or other officers who were present start removing the branches from the top of this pile?
After my investigator took photographs and we made sure police had photographs, then yes, police began moving some of the branches away.
Do you just shove all of the branches off so you can get to the bones, or is there a more methodical way in which you go layer by layer?
It's methodical. It's layer by layer. Most of the wood that was directly on top of the tarp was relatively entangled, so it could be moved in like one piece. But once we got down to smaller twigs and branches and vegetation, we actually used paint brushes to start sweeping the surface of the tarp after we had collected some of that vegetation for specimen analysis.
Once you removed all of the branches and the vegetation to the point where you could actually see the tarp, what observations did you make of it at that point?
At that point, I could see that there was a portion of the blue tarp that was not entirely encasing the bones. There were bones protruding from an opening in the tarp. It looked like some ribs and some vertebrae. We walked around the bones that were encased in the plastic in the tarp and canvassed the area looking for additional bones.
Did you start unwrapping the tarp while you were on scene?
No.
Why not?
It's very important, especially when we had a situation like this where the tarp was secured or had been secured with ropes in which there were knots. It's very important to leave those knots intact. We could also see some portions of adhesive tape on the tarp. So we never disturb any outer coverings when we have a concealed body. We try to take all of the wrappings inside to as best as possible back to our morgue for a more detailed examination, and so we don't lose any evidence.
Once you've cleared everything, in terms of the branches and the vegetation, and you make the determination this is a concealed body, so we're not opening it here, do you then put it into the black medical examiner's bag that we sometimes refer to as a body bag?
Yes, generally when we're dealing with a suspicious death, such as this one, we use a white linen sheet or an evidence sheet. We put that down at the bottom of the body bag. For this case, we used 2 body bags because of the state and the condition of the body. So we needed to use 2 body bags, one inside the other.
Once you accomplish that, is there any kind of identifying markers that you put on the bags so that you know which scene these remains belong to?
Yes. Every patient who comes to our office, every death that's reported actually is a patient. Everybody gets an identifying unique case number, which usually starts with a year and goes in sequence, so whatever next number is up. And then for this particular patient, we called him October Doe because he was not able to be identified at the scene. We also locked the body bag with a tag lock to preserve chain of custody.
Once the patient is removed then and you complete this process, when he gets back to the medical examiner's office, do you place him in a cooler?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what you do for every patient who comes to your office?
Yes.
Okay. What is the purpose then of keeping the patient in the cooler? Why not just perform the autopsy right away?
Well, it depends on the timing. Maybe it's the middle of the night. We're generally not staffed or equipped to do autopsies in the middle of the night. We might have had patients come in already who needed to have autopsies, and so he needed to wait his turn. We also needed to employ additional services that we don't have on site, like X-ray. So X-ray basically operates during the day. So we put him in the cooler to slow down or halt decomposition to prevent it from getting worse. And then we began his process the next day.
Okay. Now, you noted that October Doe was very badly decomposed. From what you could see on scene, was there any soft tissue around those bones that had been protruding from under the tarp?
There was soft tissue and liquid that had exuded or leaked from the tarp.
And so once you removed him and he went to the medical examiner's office, you talked about how you observed soft tissue and liquid underneath where the tarp would have been. Do you collect what you see?
Yes,
Why?
because there might be evidence in that soft tissue or liquid that seeped into the dirt that could be very helpful.
When we talk about a human body decomposing, when does that decomposition process start?
It starts almost immediately, actually immediately. You just don't see it right away or smell it right away. The first stage of decomp is just that cell death that's immediate. It starts when certain organs that, like the pancreas, the organ that controls blood sugar, has a lot of enzymes in it. And that cell death or that cell process of decomposition is called autolysis. So certain organs that have enzymes like the pancreas or the gastrointestinal tract like the stomach that has acid in it will break down more quickly than other organs. But that autolysis quickly, within about 3 days, depending on the situation of the body, what kind of environment the body's in, turns to putrefaction, which is bacterial decomposition. And that starts with an active decay phase, then moves on to advanced decay, where all the soft tissues start liquefying or turning to liquid. And then after advanced decay is when skeletonization happens.
Doctor, could you spell some of those terms that you just used, please?
Sure. Autolysis is AUTOLYSIS. Putrefaction, PUTREFACTION. Skeletonization, skeleton, IZATION.
Thank you.
Before I start asking you about some environmental factors, are you aware of the science behind the use of human remains detector dogs?
Yes,
And are you aware whether there is a particular odor that is released from decomposing human remains that these dogs can detect or smell when humans cannot?
yes, dogs' sense of smell is many, many, many times greater than a human sense of smell, so they're able to detect odors that we are not able to detect, essentially.
And are those, or have there been in the field, identified organic compounds from decomposing human remains, and those compounds are what the dogs are smelling?
Yes,
We have talked then about the process of body decomposition. Are you familiar with the phrases livor mortis and rigor mortis?
yes.
Can you explain to the jury what those two terms are?
Livor mortis, and it's LIVOR, is the pooling of blood to dependent areas that happens after death. So if a body is on his back at the time of death, blood will settle to the backs of the legs, the backs of the head, and turn a red or pink color, sometimes red-purple, depending on how much blood is in the body. That's livor mortis, that's blood pooling. Rigor mortis is stiffening of the muscles. So rigor mortis starts happening immediately upon death, but doesn't become apparent for usually a couple of hours, and it's gradual. So it'll start out like just with a little bit of tension in the jaw and extremities, and the muscles will gradually stiffen up until it's almost very difficult to straighten out an arm or leg. But rigor mortis and livor mortis reach a certain point, and there's no scientific algorithm to tell us for which every single decedent exactly when that would be, because it's different for everybody, because it's very dependent on lots of variables. But rigor mortis usually is set and starts to pass at 24 hours. So once rigor mortis has been oncoming, becomes set, and then passes, it doesn't come back. Livor mortis, same thing. For at least 12 hours after death, that red-pink color to red-purple color of blood pooling will blanch if pressed. After about 12 hours, it no longer blanches when pressed. So that helps narrow down a time of death if we're talking about a relatively fresh body.
We talked about environmental factors, or you at least referenced it, and how those can affect the decomposition process. What if human remains are located inside someone's home, let's say? How would that be different in terms of human remains that are outside that are outside?
Well, it would depend, the inside conditions would depend. If the body is kept in a basement, say with an earth floor or even a concrete floor, decomposition will be slowed because it will be relatively cool and dark. If the body is kept in an attic, it's going to be more hot and arid, so decomposition will proceed more quickly. There will also be more likely tendency to mummify or dry out than putrefy, which is the bacterial decomposition, also sometimes called wet decomposition that we talked about earlier. But in a house, if there are no open windows, we also won't see insect activity like we do when bodies are outdoors. Outdoor deaths tend to decompose relatively quickly because the body is exposed to elements as well as insects and animal predators. So decomposition can happen more quickly if we're talking about temperate or warm months. If we're talking about winter months, well, decomposition is going to slow down because it's cold.
When we're talking about this scene here at 1512 East North, do you recall approximately how long you were there?
I probably was there about 2 hours.
And when you canvassed, strike that. Once the patient had been removed and placed into the van to be taken back to the office, did you or your investigators or the officers on scene kind of canvass surrounding the area to see if there were any other bones that may have been missed?
My investigator and I looked, and the police did a more extensive canvass, I believe that night and continuing into the next day, if not longer.
Now, while you were on scene here, were you able to make an identification on who October Doe was?
No.
During your investigation, were you ever able to make a confirmed scientific identification?
Yes.
What is the difference between a presumptive identification and a confirmed identification?
A presumptive identification or tentative identification means it might be that person, but we don't know for sure. A scientific identification is one where we can match hardware in the body, say that has serial numbers that match before death medical records, hardware in the body to the decedent, like a prosthesis, a hip joint, or a pacemaker. Those are two good pieces of hardware that are used for scientific identification. The other route we might go for scientific identification in a fresh body would be fingerprints. If somebody has fingerprints on file, they're a very good way to make identification. Or dentals. If we know where to get dental records for that decedent, we can get those antemortem or before death dental records and compare them to dental x-rays we take on the decedent while he's at our office. And that's how we were able to make scientific identification for this decedent.
And this decedent, is his name Carlos Maldonado?
Yes.
And you used dental records to confirm scientifically his identification?
Yes.
And were the teeth relatively intact? Is that how you were able to, or do those decay, or?
Teeth last a very, very long time. They'll actually last longer than bones in some instances. So his teeth were in good condition for a scientific identification.
When you come to the point of performing an autopsy, we talked about the external exam and the internal exam. For the external examination, is that where you are kind of describing identifying features if they're there?
Yes.
From there, do you move on to any injuries that are seen externally?
Yes.
Do you also note if there are any items related to medical intervention on the body?
Yes.
And this is all done prior to that Y incision that we generally think of when we hear about an autopsy.
Correct.
Once you make that Y incision then, what is the process of the internal examination?
Generally, during a standard autopsy that requires a Y incision, the first thing we do upon opening the body is to collect body fluids like urine and blood, peripheral blood from the vein in the pelvis. That's the best specimen for toxicology. At the point at which we're done collecting body fluids and noting any trauma that we might see to the organs before we remove them, then we eviscerate by taking out all of the organs in one block, from the neck to the colon.
And then once you take out all of the organs, do you perform any individual examinations on each of those?
Yes, we dissect each organ from one another. We weigh all the major organs and then further dissect each organ, noting any kind of pathology, anything that's abnormal, any injury, anything that shouldn't be there, like tumors, or any gross evidence that can be seen with the naked eye of any kind of disease process.
Once that is completed, do you then move to the head of the individual?
Yes.
And what examination is performed at that point?
The scalp is reflected to expose the skull, and then the skull cap or the calvarium is removed to expose the brain.
And then from there, do you proceed to the neck and kind of perform that same process of taking out any of the organs and dissecting and examining?
After the brain is removed, then we do a neck dissection and take out those organs. Correct.
Once you complete an autopsy, do you prepare a report based on all of your observations and your findings?
Yes.
Is that referred to as an autopsy protocol?
Yes.
And what are some general items of information in that autopsy protocol?
The front page details the decedent's name, age, date of autopsy, cause of death. The second page is findings, so the salient findings from the examination. The next section starts with descriptions of the external examination, clothing, medical interventions, identifying marks and scars like tattoos, and then the internal examination with the description of each organ. Then microscopic examination, if any was done or necessary, any laboratory studies that might have been done, and sometimes ends with a stipulation as to whether medical records were reviewed.
Madam Clerk, can you please take the screen off from the courtroom and just leave it on for the witness, please?
Yeah.
Dr. Sheil, when it comes to Mr. Maldonado, were you able to perform that same autopsy process that we just discussed between the external examination and an internal examination with a Y incision?
No.
Why not?
Due to Mr. Maldonado's state of decomposition, he had very little soft tissue remaining. He had no viscera, which means body organs. There is no brain tissue left. So at the point at which I documented injuries, we then cleaned his bones and our forensic anthropologist did an analysis. So there was no standard autopsy in Mr. Maldonado's case.
On the screen in front of you, do you see a 9-page document that's marked as State's Exhibit 118?
Yes.
And if I continue going through this document, is this the autopsy protocol that you prepared with your findings of the autopsy of Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
On the last page of your autopsy protocol, is this a hand-drawn diagram?
Yes.
Is this something that you drew at the time of the examination?
Yes.
And why did you draw a diagram? Is that something you normally add to an autopsy protocol?
It depends on the autopsy or the type of case. If we have many gunshot wounds, we might do a diagram, or complex injuries, we might do a diagram. For Mr. Maldonado, because it's difficult to depict in the photographs, the wrappings, the black plastic sheeting and the tarp, it's difficult to discern exactly where one starts and one ends, plus the items that were included with those objects. I just did a diagram of the wrappings, the ropes, the tape, and some other items that were found within the coverings.
And in looking at what is marked as Exhibit 119, is that a single-page document, which is the handwritten diagram at the end of your autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I would move Exhibits 118 and 119 into evidence.
Mr. Lychwick, any objection to Exhibits 118 and 119? Mr. Lychwick continues to not respond to the court. Those exhibits will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you, and I would ask that they be published to the jury.
Mr. Lychwick, any objection to publication of those exhibits? No answer from the defendant. They will be used with the jury.
Okay. On the screen in front of you is Exhibit 119. So can you start kind of from the head and work your way down to the feet of Mr. Maldonado and explain what you saw along the way during your external examination?
Okay, so the very top of the diagram says grommet next, thank you, thanks, next to a circular depiction in the blue tarp. So there was a grommet in the blue tarp, and down below the second rope on your right side, there's a defect. Oh, keep going down, please. The very perimeter of the blue tarp. There's a hole next to the word defect. Yep, right there. There was another grommet there that had clearly been torn out, and you can see that on one of the lower ropes. The grommet that was torn out. So the blue tarp was partially wrapped around black plastic sheeting or black plastic garbage bag, and inside the torso region, that little green thing right there is a knotted up circular rendition of a t-shirt. This portion of t-shirt was torn. There was another piece of it that was torn off in about the same region. And this t-shirt was saturated with a thin red liquid. There were pieces of adhesive tape focally attaching the blue tarp to the black plastic, but mostly adherent to the black plastic. And around both pieces of the black plastic and the blue tarp were these 4 loops of rope. You can see now here the grommets. There are actually 2 grommets that were torn out of the tarp that were looped in this piece of rope. The 4th loop of rope was around Mr. Maldonado's ankle region, and the heel side of the diagram shows this fabric. There is a baseball cap inside the black plastic sheeting down at the feet. So I think that covers it.
It does. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please put the screen back on just for Dr. Sheil? Dr. Sheil, as part of an autopsy, and in this case in particular, actually, with Mr. Maldonado, did you take various x-rays?
Yes.
And why did you take x-rays, and how was that done?
We take x-rays in every case that's going to be a forensic anthropology case. Mostly because our forensic anthropologists really like their bones and like seeing them in detail on skeletal radiographs. But for Mr. Maldonado, because he had to come to us wrapped in these coverings, I did a set of x-rays with the coverings all intact because I wanted to make sure we didn't lose any evidence by unwrapping the coverings. And by evidence, I mean, projectiles, bullets, things like that. Anything that would show up on an x-ray that we call radio opaque, that's metallic, and would show up. So we did a set of x-rays with all the wrappings intact. And then once Mr. Maldonado was out of the wrappings, we did another set. And then once he was cleaned up, we did a formal set for Dr. Truesdell's forensic anthropology and assessment.
Have you worked with Dr. Truesdell before?
Yes.
And would that be under the same circumstances in which you have an individual who is partially or mostly skeletonized?
Yes.
When you performed that first set of x-rays on Mr. Maldonado, did you note or observe any of those or any projectiles or metallic opaque objects that you discussed?
Yes.
And did you later in the autopsy find out what those were?
Yes.
Were you able to tell, or were they recovered from particular areas of Mr. Maldonado's body?
Yes. One of the projectiles was in the soft tissues of the scalp that were still attached to the head or skull. And one of the projectiles was recovered from that decomposed soft tissue and liquid that we recovered from underneath his torso.
Dr. Sheil, in front of you, I'm showing you what a series of photos marked States Exhibits 120 through 139. During an autopsy, are photos taken at every stage by either yourself or one of your assistants or investigators?
Yes, usually one of my pathology assistants does the photos.
Okay.
That's somebody who works in the morgue rather than goes to scenes.
Thank you. Now, in scrolling through these photos here, I'll ask you to just watch as I go through them, and then I'll have some additional questions for you. Exhibit number 126, is that in black and white?
Yes.
Do you take photos, or I'm sorry, does anyone during the autopsy procedure take photos in black and white? Or is that something that was done in preparation for court today?
This was done in preparation for court.
And with autopsy photos, do they tend to be graphic in nature?
Yes.
And these are things that a lay person or a normal everyday citizen is not used to seeing. Is that fair?
Yes.
Does the black and white have the ability to still show the integrity of the photo while lessening some of the graphic nature of the photo?
Yes.
Okay. Continuing on then through this packet. Do you recognize those photos or the items in those photos from the autopsy of Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
Now, once the autopsy is completed, all the x-rays are completed, and the bones are cleaned, do you then note or continue examining for any signs of trauma or injury to the bones?
Yes.
And do you, in an example of, let's say, a gunshot wound, do you use probes to try to understand the trajectory of the bullet as it went through an individual's body?
Yes.
I'm showing you now a second set of photographs that contain photos of State's Exhibit 169 through 172. Do you recognize those photos as well?
Yes.
Are those 4 photos of Mr. Maldonado's skull?
Yes.
Looking then at the packet of photos in State's Exhibit 173 through 177, that top one is fairly small, and I don't know why, so I'll zoom in for you. Oops, that's way too small. Do you recognize what is in Exhibits 173 to 177?
Yes.
And is this or are these various photographs of a vertebrae from Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
Which vertebrae is this?
L2, the lumbar or second lumbar vertebrae.
Okay. At this time, I would move Exhibits 120 through 139, 169 through 172, and 173 through 177 into evidence and ask to publish to the jury.
Mr. Lychwick, any objection to the receipt of those exhibits? Mr. Lychwick does not acknowledge the court. Those exhibits will be received.
May I publish?
Any objection to publication, Mr. Lychwick? Hearing none, they will be allowed to be used with the jury. Before we put them on the screen, Attorney Thompson, are you intending to go through all of those pictures?
Yes.
Okay. All right, they may be published.
Thank you. Now, once again, first I have Exhibit 119, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory on an overview, because it's a little bit hard to decipher once we get to the actual in-person photos. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
It's easy for you because you know exactly what you're looking for. Now, starting with Exhibit 120, what are we looking at here?
Okay, on the right side or far side from me is Mr. Maldonado's head region. The outer covering is the blue tarp. It's covered by black plastic inside the blue tarp. Moving down, you can see some ribs. Right there is a scapula, part of the pelvis. On top of the bag, the black sheeting is a portion of a cardboard box. And down here is his foot area. And in that red bag is some of the decomposed soft tissues that were gathered from underneath the body outside the tarp at the scene.
Moving on to Exhibit 121, as we zoom in closer to Mr. Maldonado's feet area, what observations do you make here?
There's still some residual vegetation over the surface of the black sheeting. You can see the white woven rope that's binding the sheeting in place.
During the examination, did you ever undo the knots on these ropes?
No.
Then how did you remove them? Did you cut them at all, or did you slide them off?
We slid them off. It's very important to preserve knots and any kind of bindings or ropes because there might be DNA evidence within those knots.
In Exhibit 122, this is at the front of Mr. Maldonado's head.
Yes. So there's,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, the white rope around his head and shoulder region. There's some vegetation inside between the blue tarp and the black plastic. Go ahead.
Now, Exhibit 123, can you tell, this is obviously a close-up of one of the ropes, but can you tell which area of Mr. Maldonado's body this was recovered from or observed on?
I can't, no.
Okay. In Exhibit 124, is this more of the middle of Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
What did you notate in this area of Mr. Maldonado?
There is adhesive tape right there on that black plastic. I think that's,
Is this another one of the ropes that you
Yes.
referenced?
yes.
Now, in Exhibit 125, do you know what this is here towards the middle bottom of this photo that I'm circling my cursor around?
That is the baseball hat that was found in the foot region of that black plastic sheeting. It's probably a different color because this was taken on a different day than the other photos of the baseball hat.
Okay. Exhibit 126. What do you notice here in terms of trauma? Just at the initial site of the skull.
Well, adjacent to the right side of the nasal aperture, which is the opening for the nose, which is right in the middle of the photo, there's a fracture, which would be the right maxilla, portion of the right cheekbone. It's really hard to point this out to you because you've probably never seen a skull in this fashion, but there are fractures of the hard palate, which is the roof of the mouth, extending back into the base of the skull. But you can see that Mr. Maldonado's teeth of his mandible or lower jaw are in good condition.
Now, when we talk about these projectiles that you saw in the x-ray, where was the one recovered from Mr. Maldonado's head area?
That was the left posterior parietal region. If I can point that out, it's like right back here.
And you indicated it was outside of the skull, but still within the scalp.
Yes.
Okay. Then if we go to exhibit number 128, would this then just be a closer view of the projectile recovered from Mr. Maldonado's scalp?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. Looking at exhibit 129, where was this projectile found?
This projectile was recovered from the soft tissue that was underneath Mr. Maldonado's torso.
And do you recall, was it within the black plastic sheeting, or was it on the ground underneath him?
It was on the ground underneath him. So some of that dirt and decomposed soft tissue and liquid we collected, that projectile was in that mass of dirt and soft tissue. In that red bag, if that helps you. If you remember that red biohazard bag.
So if you hadn't done that additional searching and collection in the meticulous manner in which you did, we may not have ever found this.
Right, and it was very helpful that the Waukesha PD had a metal detector because it hit on some of that decomposed soft tissue and dirt underneath the torso.
Your Honor, permission to approach?
You may.
Dr. Sheil, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 155 and 156. They've previously been received. Take a look at them, please, and let me know when you're finished.
Okay?
Okay. One of the many stickers on that item, on both items, do you see your ME's office case number? WK242635.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a procedure for when you are recovering items from an autopsy so that there is some way to follow or remember that these items were taken from this autopsy?
Yes. This is the label that we use for all specimens collected during that autopsy. And the handwriting is my handwriting, and those are my initials to document that I was the one who collected and identified the material or the evidence.
And were you the one that placed these projectiles into the cardboard boxes?
Yes.
Why cardboard versus just keeping them in a plastic bag?
Well, if there's any biological evidence on the bullet, you don't want to just put it in a plastic bag because that tissue will continue to decompose. And you don't want to use a metal tin because a metal bullet's going to knock around against the inside of a metal tin and possibly mess up the rifling pattern or the ballistics evidence that can be gleaned from the bullet. So we use cardboard boxes. There's a little bit of absorbent foam or gauze in there if there is any biological tissue on the bullet.
And then can you see other stickers on that box aside from your ME's office sticker?
Yes.
Okay. If we look at exhibits 155 and 156, we can see the projectile is no longer within that cardboard box. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And in noticing that there's other stickers on there from other agencies, does that indicate to you that additional analysis was conducted on these projectiles you recovered from Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
Moving on to then exhibit 130, is this a closer view of the projectile located from Mr. Maldonado's torso area?
Yes.
Does it have a greenish tint to it?
Yes, it's oxidized.
So were these copper bullets?
Where they're copper colored, and most jacketing has at least some copper in it. That's why it turns green when exposed to oxygen.
And knowing that Mr. Maldonado was in the elements for approximately 6 months, is that consistent with the oxidation that you notice on these projectiles?
Yes.
We talked about a baseball hat that was found near Mr. Maldonado's feet in the black plastic sheeting. Is this the baseball hat in Exhibit 131?
Yes.
Now, this hat, are you able to see that it is not originally a white or a gray colored hat?
I didn't know what color this hat was.
Okay. Is this dirt or biological fluids or tissue? I mean, what's on here? Do you know?
There is some biological tissue and maybe some dirt, but a lot of it looks like decomposed tissue.
And then Exhibit 132, when we looked at that handwritten diagram, this knotted fabric, where did you find this within the tarp or the sheeting?
This was in the region of the torso in the black plastic sheeting.
Did you eventually unwrap or unknot this fabric?
I believe we did, yes.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure there wasn't anything inside the knot for this t-shirt. It was saturated with liquid, so the likelihood of there being anything evidentiary besides, say, an object in the knot was small.
Different than the ropes that you saw on each of those 4 sections of Mr. Maldonado's body, where you kept those intact.
Correct.
Okay. Moving on then to Exhibit 133. What are we looking at here?
These are Mr. Maldonado's shoes. They're navy blue and black with white soles.
So these shoes, were they still on Mr. Maldonado's feet?
I believe so.
So at this point then, all of his feet bones were still inside of the shoes he was wearing.
Correct.
Now looking at Exhibit 134, what is this?
This is some adhesive tape, which was adherent to his hand bones.
Not the black plastic sheeting or the tarp.
Correct.
So we have tape in several areas of Mr. Maldonado's body. We have tape on his actual hand bones and tape on the black plastic sheeting that's surrounding him.
Yes.
Then moving on to Exhibit 135, where's this tape located from?
This tape was on the right side of his torso. I don't know if it was originally adherent to the black plastic or if it was tape that, came loose from his hands.
Okay. Now, we've been seeing kind of in the background when it comes to the items recovered during this autopsy, it looks like a white cloth type of material. What is the reason why you're placing all of these items on this cloth?
These are white paper evidence sheets, so they're not sterile, but they haven't been used before. So they're protecting all the evidence gleaned from Mr. Maldonado's examination for contamination with any surfaces in the morgue and catching anything else that might be of evidentiary value as we remove and photograph these objects.
Does it also assist you then, you have something to write on to remind us as we look at these photos later where each item was recovered from on the body?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to Exhibit 136. What are we looking at here?
This is the length of rope that was around Mr. Maldonado's head region.
Exhibit 137.
The rope that was around his upper chest and right shoulder region.
The knots are all still intact.
Yes.
Exhibit 138.
The rope that was around his ankles.
And Exhibit 139.
The rope that was around his pelvis and legs. And that's further designated with front and back.
When we say back, is that underneath him?
Yes.
Okay. Now, once we go through the process then of the examination, you've taken all these photos of the items that are removed, are the bones then cleaned for that analysis? Or for the next part of this analysis?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we saw an exhibit, I think it was 126, that Mr. Maldonado's skull still had some tissue on it. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, once his bones are cleaned, are you then able to get a clearer picture of the trauma we saw in that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to then the packet with exhibits 1 169 through 172. Starting with 169. This is still Mr. Maldonado's skull, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what are we looking at here when it comes to the section of your autopsy protocol where you are notating evidence of injury?
This is a depiction of the front of Mr. Maldonado's skull. So you can see again his teeth are in relatively good condition in his lower jaw. His nasal aperture, which is the opening to his nasal cavities, right there, is enlarged on the right side because there's a fracture of the cheekbone and right maxilla. Actually, the maxilla is almost totally missing in this photo because of these fractures. The fracture continues to behind the nose, and I don't think we can see very well in this photo, but it goes through the back of the face, which we also call the basilar, B-A-S-I-L-A-R, basilar skull, into the cranial cavity.
Now, if we look at, Exhibit 170, and I'll exit out of this and maybe zoom in to assist with the next questions that I have. So looking at 170, what are we looking at here?
This is the left posterior parietal region of the skull. So the back of the head, like I designated earlier. There's a defect here that's, very roughly triangular or bell-shaped. And this hole has a gray margin. So surrounding the hole, the skull looks like it's at a different level from the base of the hole to where the defect looks like it ends on the top of the skull surface. It's basically a gradient. This is called external beveling, and it's very helpful in telling us the directionality of a bullet, so the wound pathway. External beveling means there's this angular surface to the defect on the outside of the skull, and it means that the bullet passed through that skull to the outside, so it was moving front to back. So the bullet's pushing through the skull from the inside out. And around this defect are radiating linear fractures. They look like the spokes of a wheel. So this is a very typical, classic exit gunshot wound to the skull. Now, I say exit to the skull because this bullet did exit the skull. It just didn't have enough velocity to get through the scalp, which is why we were able to recover it, because it was still underneath that scalp tissue.
Moving on then to Exhibit 171, which actually probably would have been more helpful to have up when you were just discussing the beveling and the radiating fractures. But this is closer up of 170, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then if we go to Exhibit 172, does this show the probe that is used to assess the trajectory of the bullet as it goes through Mr. Maldonado's skull?
Yes.
And what was the trajectory of this bullet?
This bullet was traveling front to back, slightly upward, and slightly right to left. So if it enters his midface at about his nose, passes through his skull in an upward fashion, and then exits slightly to the left on the back of the skull. That's a front to back, slightly up, slightly right to left trajectory.
And so this, based on your training and your experience, this injury that we see here is a gunshot wound.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we go to Exhibits 173 and 177, are these photos then of the, I think you said L2 vertebrae?
Yes.
So can you give the jury an overview of the makeup of the spine so we can understand where on the person's spine or back we would be seeing this vertebrae?
Okay. So the skull sits on top of the first cervical vertebrae. That's the first vertebrae in the neck. There are 7 cervical vertebrae or neck vertebrae. The first thoracic vertebrae starts just below the nape of your neck and continues down your back. And there are 12 thoracic vertebrae. After the 12th thoracic vertebrae, the lumbar vertebrae start, and there are 5 lumbar vertebrae, L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. And then there are sacral vertebrae, or the sacrum. So this is the second lumbar vertebrae, so we're talking lower back. The front of what you're looking at here, the bulky part, sits, this rounded bulky part is if you were looking at a person head on. So that's the front of the vertebrae. The back of the vertebrae comes to a point, and that's what you would feel through your skin if you're palpating or feeling your back. You'd feel the spinous process. So if you're looking at this vertebra, there is a fracture that starts on the right side of the body and continues, continues in an angular fashion towards the left side of the vertebral arch. So there's this bulky mass that's kind of rounded, that's the body, and the whole rest of the vertebrae is called the arch. And there are particular parts of the arch which you don't need to know, except that there are fractures through some of this arch on this particular vertebrae as well as the body, and there's a hole in a portion of this vertebral arch.
Now, Exhibit 174 is a much closer up version of Exhibit 173. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, on the left side here, we see that there almost looks like some rough, like a rough area of the L2. Is this broken?
It's broken, but it looks normal for what it's showing because there's a fracture there. The inside of a vertebra is porous, so it'll look like a sponge because it's built of bone marrow, which is a lot of blood cells and fat and tiny little bony fragments called trabecula. So it's supposed to look spongy, but there's not supposed to be a fracture there.
Okay, and this fracture here, what I'm dragging my cursor over, is that the fracture you're talking about?
That and the whole part that's exposing the porous surface, that's fractured too.
Okay,
Right there.
so this porous surface, that's not the same as the beveling, for example, that we saw on Mr. Maldonado's skull that we talked about earlier.
No.
Okay. So moving to Exhibit 175, can you tell us what we're looking at here?
We're looking at a portion of the vertebral arch, and you can see another fracture that extends all the way from the top of the vertebrae, it's a little blurry up there, through the arch there, and continues down to this point here.
And then, similar to the skull, did you also use a probe to determine the trajectory of this bullet as it went through Mr. Maldonado's L2 vertebra?
Yes. Okay. If we could go back a little bit.
Yes. Oops.
So what I didn't mention is that there's a hole right in the middle of what we call the lamina. That's that portion of vertebral arch that I was talking about that had a hole in it. There's a hole here, and this hole, this defect, does also exhibit external beveling, just like the exit gunshot wound to the skull did. There's just a little bit that you can see on the right side of the defect where the surface of the bone looks a little bit angled.
So this hole is not supposed to be here?
No.
Okay. Now, Exhibit 176.
Okay, so this probe is showing the trajectory of this bullet pathway. It's passing from anterior on the right side, traveling backwards through this hole that we saw in the vertebral arch and out. So this would be out towards the skin of the lower back.
Dr. Sheil, when we talk about the trajectory of the bullets, obviously we can determine that here based on what we have. Are you able to tell how close an individual was to Mr. Maldonado when these two gunshots were fired?
No,
Why not?
we don't have any skin surrounding the entrance gunshot wounds that might show as soot or stippling, which is gunpowder tattooing of the skin surrounding the entrance gunshot wound. Because we don't have soft tissue or skin to detail those entrances for us, we cannot determine range of fire.
Is that something you could otherwise do if you still had soft tissue?
Yes,
If maybe we had found Mr. Maldonado the day after he was killed?
correct.
Are you able to tell, based on your examination and the state of Mr. Maldonado's body, which gunshot wound happened first?
No,
If you had,
no,
if you still had soft tissue, or if we had located Mr. Maldonado's body the day after he was killed, is that something you might be able to determine?
there would be more of a chance of determining that, yes, if he had been fresh.
Okay. When we talk about the L2, and I think in general, when people think of the spine and an injury to it, a very quick thought is possible paralysis. Would that be fair to say?
Yes,
Are you able to tell, based on the path of travel of this bullet, whether or not Mr. Maldonado would have been paralyzed from this gunshot wound?
I don't know if he would have been or not. This particular vertebra sits at just the level where the spinal cord branches. There's the terminus of the spinal cord, and it branches into a lot of little tentacles that look like a horse's tail. That's why it's called the cauda equina. That's CAUDAEQUINA. So L2 designates the point at which the spinal cord separates into the little nerve trails that are called the cauda equina. So it's very possible that his legs would have been paralyzed, or he would have suffered a spinal cord injury, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly because everybody's a little bit anatomically different how that would have manifested in Mr. Maldonado. It would have been a low paralysis, meaning a low spinal cord paralysis, had he been paralyzed.
Attorney Thompson, I'd like to take a break now if we could.
Sure.
All right, so let's take a 10-minute break, and we will resume. Again, I'll remind you, ladies and gentlemen, to not discuss the case amongst yourselves.
All right.
Thank you. You may be seated. We are outside the presence of the jury. I called for a break just because we're at the 10:07 mark and figured it would be a good time. Do you anticipate having much more direct?
No.
Okay. I didn't want to put you on the spot, though, to ask you first before calling for the break. Anything the state wants to put on the record before we break?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lychwick, anything from you?
Yes. This so-called trial is a travesty of justice. I am not receiving a fair trial. I have no defense. You won't give me a chance to ramp up my defense or obtain a defense. I've had no chance to do so. I've been locked up and isolated from the world in this jail for 18 months, denied medical care and proper food and rest. I cannot be expected to defend myself under these circumstances.
Your continued
protest.
objections are noted. I'll make a record that while testimony has been going on today, first the defendant has what appears to be some materials with him today. The defendant was writing notes during Dr. Sheil's testimony and also reading through his materials, so he's active and alert. He's just choosing not to participate. We will break and come back at in about 10 minutes.
Yes.
We're back on the record. Let's call for the jury.
I sent him a message, but if you want to, you can.
Yeah. 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 I'm thinking about it. Mm-hmm.
She wants you to set this up. She wants you to set this up.
No. There's a lot of things I didn't read it, choose your own. This is what this when you're in jail.
What?
I'll get this when I come visit you.
We'll talk about this. I'm ready for all this.
Yeah. I mean.
Oh, no.
All rise, jury.
How do you know that?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I retired. Might have been the detector sergeant at that time.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, everyone is situated. Attorney Thompson, you may continue.
Thank you. Dr. Sheil, before we broke, we were just talking about how there were a couple things you aren't able to opine on based on the lack of soft tissue present. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Although you can't tell which gunshot wound happened first, actually, before I ask that question, when we're talking about the gunshot wound to Mr. Maldonado's torso area, to the L2 vertebra, you talked about how that trajectory is front to back. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So entering the front of his body and then the back. So with that path of travel, what organs would have been potentially in the path of that bullet?
The right kidney, probably the ascending colon, the inferior vena cava, which is the largest vein in the body. Depending on the you know, when a a bullet passes through the body, it creates a temporary cavity due to the explosion of gases. And depending on how big that cavity was, it could have also gotten a portion of the small intestine and the pancreas. So while not immediately fatal, it could have been fatal.
Were you able to come to an estimated date of death for Mr. Maldonado?
Yes,
And was that April 14th of 2024?
yes.
How were you able to come to that conclusion?
When we are dealing with such an extended post-mortem interval, meaning the time since death, as with Mr. Maldonado, in the state of decomposition, the longer you are from the actual date of death till the discovery of the body and examination, the longer that interval, the harder it gets to determine date of death. So sometimes our best evidence is last known well or last seen alive. So for Mr. Maldonado, he was last seen alive and actually caught on video on April 14th, 2024, wearing the same clothing that I identified on him at autopsy. That was the best evidence I had that he had been alive at some point on April 14th, but then was never seen again.
Madam Clerk, can you please place the screen on for the courtroom? And I'm going to pull up Exhibit 118, which is your autopsy protocol.
Are you requesting publication of that?
Yes, please.
Mr. Lychwick, any objection to publishing Exhibit 118? Mr. Lychwick does not respond. It may be published.
Do you see that exhibit sticker at the bottom right for 118?
Yes.
And is this your signature at the bottom of the first page of your autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we talk about these two gunshot wounds, even though we can't tell which one happened first, could either one of those gunshot wounds have been fatal to Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
At the conclusion of your investigation in this matter, what was the cause of death? What was the cause and manner of death for Mr. Maldonado?
Mr. Maldonado's cause of death was homicidal violence with gunshot wounds to head and torso. His manner of death was homicide.
I do not have any other questions for this witness.
Mr. Lychwick, do you have cross-examination questions? Mr. Lychwick is not acknowledging the court. Therefore, doctor, you may sit down. Thank you.
And Judge, before I call my next witness, I just want to ensure that all exhibits I used with Dr. Sheil to include 117, 118, and 119, 120 through 139, 169 through 172 are all admitted and received by the court.
And I also have 173 through 177.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, those are all admitted and received. I do have some exhibits on the witness stand. Attorney Thompson, if you could deliver those to my clerk, please.